Hello, my friends. I hope everyone's doing well today. This is to continue my series on herbal remedies. And today I want to talk about the acacia plant. And let me give you a little history on herbal medicine first. Many herbs have been historically used to treat infections caused by bacteria that are now antibiotic resistant. Medical research outside the United States has been exploring plants that treat antibiotic-resistant diseases. From before recorded history, plants have been used as the primary healing medicines for human beings. In fact, anthropologists have found medicinal herbs intentionally placed in the graves of Neanderthal man over 60,000 years ago. Indigenous cultures throughout the world have long established and highly sophisticated systems of healing using plant medicines. Modern medical researchers have not found anything new, but within their framework they have confirmed the power of plant medicines that have been used for healing for thousands of years. The research resulting from the resolution adopted by the WHO organization, World Health Organization, who, by the way, the United States has now decided not to back because of their questionable affiliations with the Chinese. And they engaged in forward-thinking companies and scientists in Europe, and this has been a while ago, before they were corrupted, or so we're told, have revealed that instead of being a quaint quackery of our forefathers, many herbs possess strong antibacterial properties. Given the nature of bacteria, it is not unreasonable to assume that new antibiotics would only postpone the problem. Bacteria would in time become resistant to them, and that has been proven over and over. Look at the flu every year. The flu shot that you get this year is not going to protect you from the new strain of flu next year, because that particular virus, this is not bacteria, but it is a virus, has mutated into something else and is resistant to the flu shot you got this year. So, and personally, being that the one and only time that I did get a flu shot, I ended up deathly ill for like 2 weeks. This was years ago when they first came out, because they don't really ask you if you're allergic to anything, and it turns out I was allergic to something in the flu shot, and it actually almost killed me. And it's in my opinion, a waste of time, because this year's flu, you can get the flu shot, and if you get this year's strain of flu next year, yes, it will protect you. But the mutated virus, it will not protect you from, so you still can get the flu. So I've opted not to take any more flu shots because they're going to kill me. Anyway, there's a great deal of promise in addressing this problem through the use of plant medicines instead of antibiotics, because plants have much more complex chemistry than the manufactured antibiotics. Garlic, for example, has been found to contain at least 33 sulfur compounds, 17 amino acids, and a dozen other compounds. Pharmaceuticals, in contrast, are usually made from one chemical constituent only. For example, penicillin is penicillin. Tetracycline is tetracycline. Pharmaceutical antibiotics are, in fact, simple substances, not complex, And because of this, bacteria can more easily figure out how to counteract their effects. But herbs are very complex. When a person takes a herbal medicine, you're not just taking one thing. You're taking, in some cases, over 100 different compounds with that herb. And it makes bacteria much more inept at overcoming or creating a resistance to 120 compounds as opposed to one or two. Now, pharmacies have began to mimic the plant medicines. They're finding that combined pharmaceutical antibiotics work better. So I don't know if you've noticed or known anyone who's recently taken antibiotics for, flu or colds or whatever. But for example, like pneumonia, you take, and I think I have this right, it's called a Z-Pak, which is a combination of medications for that ailment. They don't just give you one medicine. It's like a combination. So they're beginning to figure out that the bacteria has a much harder time overcoming several components on a medical regimen rather than one thing. And this simple mimicry of plant medicines is still not enough for the pharmaceuticals. The bacteria notice and develop resistance to the combinations. But if you have an herb like garlic, for example, that has 120 complex components, that bacteria is going to have a much rougher time than overcoming 3 or 4. The top 15 antibiotic herbs, I'll just throw this in while I'm talking about it, is Acacia, which I'm going to talk about today. And I use mine in powder form. Aloe, Cryptolepis. Cryptolepis is one of the best antibiotic herbs I have ever come across. To me, it is, and this is just my opinion, and I am not a doctor, but to me, Cryptolepis is on the same category as, gosh, I left my head, what you take for anthrax. That same kind of medication you take for anthrax. And I'll think of it in a minute. It skipped my mind right now. But also in this list is echinacea, eucalyptus, garlic, ginger, golden seal, which I've already talked about, grapefruit seed extract, honey, juniper, licorice, sage, usnea, and wormwood. And I'll be covering those later. Acacia is in the mimosas family of plants. You can use all of the plant, the flowers, the resin, the bark, leaf, pod, stems, fruit, spines, root, and root bark. So the whole plant is usable. The plant may be gathered at a suitable time of the year when the pods are green and the flowers are in bloom. The roots should be chopped into small sections before drying. The gum may be gathered by breaking off several lower limbs, and these are the acacia bushes and trees, and returning in a few days. Okay, a sharp hatchet should be used in the gum collected after it starts to form. The collected plant will last a long time if well dried, double plastic bagged, and stored in a dark place off the floor. I have a storage room in my house that I store all of my herbs, and I've had this for a while, but I like it in the powdered form because I think it mixes better when you need to use it combined or alone. The actions of this herbal plant, or the things that it attacks, it's an anti-malarial, astringent, antibacterial, antimicrobial, hemostatic, anthelmintic, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, and the flowers and leaves can be used as a sedative. Acacias are quite useful for ulceration in any part of the gastrointestinal tract, for excessive mucus, diarrhea, dysentery, gum infection, and hemorrhages. Though rarely used for parasitic infections in the United States, they are common for that use in other cultures. They share a common use throughout the world for amoebic dysentery. Get one of those old bugs in your system and it can really mess you up. Actually, I've been there, done that. So, and then you have to kill the little parasites in your intestines, or basically your intestines will start bleeding. And let me tell you, it's extremely painful. Acacia, or mimosas as they are sometimes called, grow throughout the temperate world. The United States has several species. And here, let me put a picture of one of these species up for you. They grow throughout the southern part of the country, as far north as Kansas, from California to Florida, and in the southwestern states. Acacia is rarely used now in the United States, but continues to be a primary medicinal plant throughout the rest of the world, especially in Asia and Africa. Okay, acacia is generally used as a tea, a wash, or a powder, which I prefer the powder. The powder, the reason I use it is for fungal infections, infected wounds, and to stop bleeding of wounds and prevent subsequent infection. This is, for me, I keep it around as a wound powder. If you are not able to get to a hospital or a doctor, and you live out in a remote area like I do, then this is very good to stop bleeding in deep wounds, and also prevents infection and fights infection in that wound until you can get to proper medical attention. It'll keep a bad situation from becoming much worse. There's no side effects to this herb whatsoever, so it's okay for anyone to use it. And if you want an alternative to acacia, if you decide there is some reason that you don't want to use this herb, or you have, anybody can have an allergic reaction to any herb, so be careful with that. A substitute for acacia is mesquite, of all things. It's a relative and similar appearing plant with a much broader range in the Southwest, and can be used identically. Same preparation, same dosage, same results. So that's my talk today on herbal medicines. This is a powder. I like it's a powder because you can pour it directly into a wound, and you don't have to prepare it or do anything unless you want to make it into a paste, which you just add water and, make a paste. For surface wounds, these can be put in deep wounds. I have a wound recipe that I keep in a jar that has several herbal properties, several different plants, and this is one of the ones that's mixed into it. So thank you for today's talk on acacia. I hope that it has helped you and you've learned something, and this is a good plant to have around. So I buy mine because this, again, is another herb that I can't grow out here. We do have mesquite out here in the desert, but I can't grow this plant. But I prefer this over the mesquite. So I buy the powder, keep it on hand. Any deep wounds or any problems, I can use this. And being that it does have a sedative property, it does dull the pain of an injury somewhat, not totally, but it does help dull the pain somewhat. So that's my talk today. I hope you enjoyed it. I totally believe in herbs. I rarely take pharmaceutical medicine unless I just have no other alternative. I probably mentioned before that I do take a thyroid pill because I had my thyroid removed years ago. And so I can't get around that, but I can't, there is no herb for that. That has to be manufactured. It is a natural occurring, you can make it from pig hormone, and then you do something with it in the lab, which I have no idea. And I don't have the knowledge or the laboratory in order to make the Cindywvlogs. So I have to, take that. I have to get that from a doctor. But anything else, almost anything else, I use my herbs. So I go to a doctor once, I get the hiccups. I go to a doctor once a year to get my thyroid prescription and to get my blood test to make sure that, the thyroid levels are what they should be. And that's it. That's the only time I ever go to the doctor. Thank goodness I have not had a need to go to a doctor for anything else. I stay relatively healthy. So, but I love this stuff. Excellent for wounds. And like I said, if you live out in the middle of nowhere like I do, herbal medicine comes in handy. And also on a prepping stand too. I mean, if you're a prepper, you need to know herbs. Not just food, not just water, but you need to be prepared medically as well. And knowing your herbs, knowing what they look like, and can identify them and use them properly in a prepping situation where you cannot get medical supplies could save your life or a member of your family. So I highly recommend that you learn about herbs, learn to use them, find out which recipes are good for you to use and for your family, and always, 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 before you give anybody anything, check for allergies. Ask them if they might be allergic to something, because a lot of these are considered weeds. And, basically they're just plants that grow wild. And some people could have some allergies. So always check that before you give anybody anything, because you could do them harm rather than good if they're allergic to something in your medicines. So that's our talk for today. You have a great day, good evening, good morning, whatever time of day it is for you. And God bless every one of you, and be safe out there with all this insanity going on. Be safe and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.